My friend Brian Brady referred to the idea of testudo fatherhood as going Amish, which I thought was really funny. Not so, but I am appropriately attired, I should think. I am at the end of winter and afraid to cut my hair because I'm afraid I'll catch a cold immediately if I do. I'm scruffy as hell. I'm dressed in an author's shirt, which is the next best thing to a flannel shirt, and a flannel shirt is kind of a reliable signal of testudo fatherhood. A lot of guys in flannel shirts, particularly if the sons are also in flannel shirts, look for the boots too. You're seeing a guy who has his own ideas about how to raise his family, and he's not interested in outside influences. That's what testudo fatherhood is. It doesn't have to be something you agree with. It doesn't have to be something you approve of. It doesn't even have to be DS. It almost always is DS fatherhood, but it doesn't have to be. It just has to be. Dad has a very clear idea of how he wants his family to comport itself, and they respond accordingly. He has a plan, and they hew to it. And if he's DC, he'll raise replicas and rebels, one or the other. If he's DS, he'll raise DS sons and SD daughters, and they'll have DS families of their own, raising DS sons and SD daughters, and this can go on forever. The story, Madeline Nguyen is always going to win in train dancing, is about a Vietnamese family. And I don't even tell you if they're Christians or Buddhists or what. I don't care. What I care about is that mom's parents and dad's parents are essentially identical. Not fungible, because relationships aren't fungible, but so similar that the two children growing up in those families, and the many children growing up in those families, when they marry people who have exactly the same expectations about how a family is to be governed, how it is to behave in the real world, how it is to be optimized is the right way to think of it. Programmed and optimized. How is that to be done? They have the same ideas, and therefore there is no conflict in the marriage, and because there is no conflict in the marriage, there's no conflict available to either distress or incentivize the child. The children don't become incentivized to pit one parent against the other. They don't learn how to cheat by the two parents trying to cheat each other into each other's point of view. The parents have the same point of view, and therefore the children have the same point of view, and it goes on indefinitely. This is the miracle of testudo fatherhood. And the most amazingly, fundamentally beautiful thing about testudo fatherhood from my point of view is that I don't have to tell these dads a goddamn thing. There's nothing I can tell them anyway. They're not listening to outside influences. But it really doesn't matter what I tell them, because they already know it better than I do. They know it way better than I do. They're following through. They're doing the deal. They're delivering the goods. They're doing the job. And they're doing it according to their own plan, and they are not keeping any counsel but their own, which is appropriate. Keep your own counsel. It's one of the rules of this church. But I have been working, well, for years, but over the past year especially last summer, talking about how to optimize families, essentially. How to program families so that you program better children who result in that sort of continuing, ongoing, generation after generation testudo family, that DS testudo family. How do you make that replicate? How do you gin it up from scratch? The testudo fathers who are already out there are doing the deal, and God bless them, and they're going to inherit the future regardless of what anyone else does, because they're the only people who are reliably fecund and reliable at cultivating self-responsible offspring who are in their own turn reliably fecund and reliably self-responsible. They're going to own the future because most people don't breed. Whole cadres of our population don't breed, including all of libertarianism. But those few of us who do breed inauspiciously in ways that are unlikely to result in greater future fecundity, greater future self-responsibility. The healthy adaptation is going to take over the environment because it's going to out-reproduce every other adaptation. This is, as a matter of a biological strategy, assuming no politics, just let the biology run, the testudo fathers take over the world, just as they did once before politics got in their way. But the problem is politics has gotten in the way, and fatherhood has been eviscerated in the West. We had decent DS fatherhood for centuries, thanks to Loyola, thanks to not Catholic schools, but classical schools, schools that taught the classical curriculum, whether they were religious or not, Catholic or Protestant, non-sectarian, it doesn't matter. The Lutheran schools, for example, but many charter schools, for that matter, a whole lot of really good schools over the centuries have maintained DS fatherhood against all of the onslaughts against it. But Marxism finally won, to the point that most kids are being born inauspiciously. They're being born into families where they're unlikely to learn DS values and therefore unlikely to create testudo families when they grow up, and therefore unlikely to be reliably fecund and reliably self-responsible. This is not going to happen for these children unless someone intervenes. The fatherhood has been destroyed. If we want to cultivate a new generation of good testudo fathers, we've really got to start with babies. I say this all the time, toddlers matter most. I love everyone who loves life. I love everyone who wants to do better, and I want to help anyone who wants to do better. But if you're old enough to be watching this movie, the game is largely over for you. You can do better from here, but there are things that you can't do because the time for doing them is past. So, for instance, you can't be the testudo father to 5 or 6 sturdy young kids, because if you were going to do that, you would have had to have started at 18 with a 17-year-old Valkyrie who had your exact same theory on the subject of reproduction, and the two of you have been popping them out every 2 or 3 years ever since. This didn't happen. Almost certainly didn't happen. There are a few people who watch me for whom that story will be true, but almost none of them, the overwhelming majority of people watching a movie made by me or made by, what's his name, Dr. I don't know his first name, Peterson, Jordan Peterson, or Stefan Molyneux, or any other ideologue you might see on the internet. If you're watching YouTube, you're infecund. Almost certainly. Less than ideally fecund, certainly, but probably without reproduction, and plausibly you will never reproduce. YouTube attracts a whole lot of involuntarily celibate people, so it's not a huge leap. But because you're an adult, you, practically speaking, you don't matter for the future. If you're not already doing the job, if you're not already a testudo father, you're not already headed for that if you're a child or a teenager. If you're not already on that course, you won't be on that course, and therefore you will not have achieved the results that happen at the end of that course. These can only happen for people who are prepared from childhood for it. And accordingly, toddlers matter most. And so the work I did over the summer was essentially a elaboration of how to go about raising DSSD children, how to cultivate DSSD virtues in children who may not be seeing very much of that at home, and how to encourage parents who have young children to adopt DSSD upbringing so that their children fare better going forward, even if their family, that particular family, is not the ideal that we're talking about of 2 teenagers so enthralled with each other that they can't stop popping out perfect babies, who can't stop popping out perfect babies, who can't stop popping out perfect babies. That's what we want, and that's what we want from everyone and for everyone. But the people who are going to actually achieve that are no more than 3 right now, and the people who really matter have not yet advanced to the miracle of insemination. If I can talk to more teenage boys, I'm definitely interested. Younger than that, teenagers, even better. But my ideal target market is 3. My ideal target market is a toddler, because I can take one word like thrive and say that one word to a child in 1,000 different ways and put 1,000 different ideas in that kid's head that will be there forever. I can encourage him only to be industrious, only to practice sociable leadership, only to be kind, only to defend against cruelty. I can teach DS and SD to toddlers in such a way that it becomes their way of life. It becomes the way that they grow up. And those toddlers, some of them, maybe a lot of them, God help me, all of them, can grow up to be testudo parents and raise their own children in DSSD virtues, because it's the simplest thing in the world. It's the easiest thing in the world, is to eliminate the I, eliminate the C from your upbringing. That's all. You like work, you like leadership, you like kindness, you like sociability, you like sociable work, and kind proceeds from the prior efforts, but you encourage work and you encourage kindness, and you discourage show-off behavior, and you discourage controlling behavior. You don't encourage your children to be C-I-I-C in any way at all. You emphasize the D, emphasize the S, and in 20 years you have sane, normal, civilized people who are sexually competent, sexually attractive, and sexually interested in becoming those kind of parents. When I wrote Man Alive, I thought we could take the world in 500 days. How silly was I? I'm interested in persuading anyone I can persuade. If you're an adult, learn better, do better, I can help. Go read Man Alive, it'll help a lot. Go read Father's Day, it'll help a lot. But I am most interested in toddlers. Toddlers matter most because toddlers can be influenced to be unfailingly good in their choices for life. Program them to be DS and SD, just in the displays that you make as a parent, or that other adults make in their interaction with children, but help children discover the virtue and value of D and S strategies in making their choices, and they'll make better choices for life, including choosing to become testudo parents, with or without the Amish. My name is Greg Swan. This is the Church of Splendor. I'm so glad you could join me. Tolerate my singing, tolerate my crazy eyes, tolerate my scruffiness. I'm here to do better. If you are too, we can work together. Bless you. Thank you.